shown on the screen are actually the types of food I was eating, and literally some of the foods I was eating to help heal myself. So just as a further introduction, as she already mentioned, Dr. Ruby Lathon, and my organization that I lead is Roadmap to Holistic Health. And from that, we do a lot of things like these type of forums where we're educating people, doing cooking classes, conferences, all types of things to get the word out that you have the power to heal yourself. As I've mentioned, my first career was in engineering. My degrees are in engineering and computer science. And it was back in 2007 that I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And at that moment, my gut instinct just said, surgery is not the right option. That was the only option that was given to me, was to have surgery and then have my thyroid removed. And I knew that meant being on a medication forever. And that's something that I was very much opposed to. And so I said, I'm just going to find the natural way to do this, because I've heard of other people being healed naturally from cancer. So if they can do it, so can I. So I just started studying without any agenda. And the research pointed to diet, and particularly plant-based diets. That is the single most impactful element of your health, is your diet. Now, the second most impactful thing to your health is really your attitude. And we'll get more into that and how you think about yourself and how you think about food and things. But the most concrete thing is your diet. So I switched to a plant-based diet. I got rid of all the frozen processed food, and particularly a lot of dairy that I was eating, and a lot of processed food. So that was a big switch for me, was getting rid of, because I was mostly vegetarian at the time, but I relied on cheese products as kind of the meat substitute, and a lot of the processed veggie items as well. And not enough of fresh fruits and vegetables. And so the big shift was getting rid of that, getting rid of the eggs, the cheese, and dairy, all the rest of the dairy products. Getting rid of the meat and the fish wasn't a big deal, because I really wasn't eating the meat. And I rarely ate fish occasionally. So for me, it was the cheese trap, and the eggs and all of that. So I let those things go, and I started juicing wheatgrass, just 2 ounces a day, because I didn't feel like I had the bandwidth to just juice pounds and pounds of vegetables every day. But I researched and found that wheatgrass, about 2 ounces of wheatgrass, is about equivalent to 4 or 5 pounds of vegetables. So to me, it made a lot of sense. Let's just do 2 ounces of wheatgrass a day and get going. I added ginger and carrot juice to wash it down and help settle the stomach. And then I started taking, I went to this lifestyle treatment center where they teach you how to use food as medicine. And I went there for about 3 weeks. And that was about 3 weeks after the diagnosis. I went there for 3 weeks. It's a place called Uchee Pines. People always ask me what it is. So it's UCHEE Pines. There are several places like that that are lifestyle related, that treat it from that perspective and treat it using natural methods. So some of the natural methods included hydrotherapy, where you're getting in a tub of very, very hot water for about 30 minutes to induce fever-like symptoms, which trigger your T cells to fight whatever is going on in your body. You have to do that somewhat supervised, so you don't pass out, and thermometer, so you're not over 110 degrees, so you don't burn yourself. Now, if you have something like diabetes, you probably don't want to do it, because sometimes there's neuropathy and you really can't feel how hot things are. But for the average person, that's something that you can do. And so those were the kind of things, from massage therapy to a hyperbaric chamber to eating very clean plant-based juicing, those kind of things. So I was taught here are the things that are healing, and here are the things that you might want to stay away from. Like the microwave, for example, I don't use a microwave. I use it as storage because it really kind of changes the food in a negative way and takes out a lot of the nutrients of it. So I came back all natural, threw out all the junk and really started on this plant-based journey. And then from there, I started researching more supplements that would help me heal. And so I had told the doctor I was going to try this natural approach. He was just very negative about it. And then I realized, why am I paying this doctor to go and get discouraged every couple of months? So I switched doctors to someone who would just monitor my progress of the thyroid. There was the tumor was about a centimeter and a half. And I said, I just want someone who can monitor, make sure it's not growing, and tell me what's going on. And so I found someone who would do that. And I basically took charge of the process and said, I'm my doctor, you give me the reports, I am the one who's in charge of me. And that was very different for them as physicians who are used to passing on your information to another doctor or someone else and not talking to you as if you can understand what it means. And so when I started taking charge and said, I'm going to go back for the scans when I'm ready, when I feel healed. And initially I thought this would be like a 2 or 3 month process. Since the tumor is so small, it should be gone immediately. And after 3 months, it was still there. So I realized there was more to this process than just the food and just the supplements. And for me, it was understanding kind of the genesis of disease. It usually starts with an emotional component. While we heal it with food and other things, it usually starts with some type of emotional component when we're dealing with cancer. It doesn't just pop up. So there are a couple of things. So we say inflammation is the biggest factor in disease, and most disease starts in the gut. So when you take that back a few steps, so it is true that most of the diseases start in the gut and most diseases are related to chronic inflammation, but a lot of that chronic inflammation and things in the gut do stem from diet, for sure, eating the wrong things that inflame our bodies, but also it can come from harboring things like anger, jealousy, unresolved trauma in your childhood or early adult life, things that are painful, not dealing with it, stuffing down your emotions, all of those kind of things that are left unresolved also contribute to that inflammation and gut health problems. So for me, I had to learn how to speak up more. I was the people pleaser. And a lot of people can identify with wanting to be a people pleaser, but what that really stems from is not feeling valued and loved enough to make waves when you need to, afraid to make those waves, right? So I was afraid that if I wasn't the people pleaser, I would be a burden and people wouldn't like me or something like that. So I had to learn how to speak up and love myself enough to stand up for myself and not care what other people think. And what I found from that is the more you value yourself, the more people value you. The more boundaries you have, the more respect you get, where it feels like the opposite. So for me, I started saying no to all the things I didn't want to do that I was saying yes to. I started just living life on my terms, which meant quitting my job as an engineer because I really didn't like it. Working in defense, it meant like just following my bliss. And so once I realized that that emotional component was there, and I tapped into that emotional component when I started meditating, because that's when your mind is quiet enough to kind of speak back to you. It was on a beach. I had been studying for months about how to heal myself, and I decided to take a vacation finally for a couple of weeks, which I'd never taken like a 2 or 3 week vacation ever in life. And I said, I'm just going to the beach for 3 weeks. I had a friend who had a place that I could use. So I went there. So I was on the beach and I was sitting there by myself, looking at the water. It was just the most beautiful thing ever. And that's when it came to me what to do in terms of my routine, that I was trying to do too much because I was one of those people, like many people, when you start researching on the internet, you want to try everything. There's soursop, there's this, there's that, there's curcumin, there's 1,000 ways to heal. And I was trying to like take all of it and fit it in. I had to have a schedule of when to take what, and it was overwhelming and burdensome. And so it came to me that you don't have to do everything. There's more than one way to heal. You have to do what resonates with you and what makes sense. And what made sense to me was, number one, let's deal with the inflammation, because my thyroid was inflamed because it was larger than it was supposed to be. So, and they always say, you know, there's no cure for that when you have an enlarged thyroid, unless it's related to iodine. So I said, first, let's deal with inflammation. So number one, we're dealing with inflammation by eating anti-inflammatory foods, and we'll get into that in a moment. Number two, let's support the immune system, because when something like cancer or other diseases manifest, it means your immune system wasn't strong enough to fight them off. So let's support the immune system so it can get all the reinforcement it needs to do its job. And then let's add in some things that actually fight cancer. And so I put those things in those three categories. Those are the things I'm going to take. And I don't need to take 5 in each category. Let's choose the top 2 or 3 in each of those categories. And that's what's going to be our routine. We're going to continue with the plant-based diet and let it work, and use the faith that you have that it would work. And so that came to me when I was sitting on the beach, and I was like, oh, wow, it was like an epiphany. And so when I got back home, that's what I did. And that's when I took charge and stopped just going to the doctor on the schedule. I said, I'm going to go back when I feel healed, when I'm ready, I'm in charge. There's no one to answer to but me. And so I felt so much relief after that. And then I started visualizing the cancer leaving my body. Every day I would, after I meditate, I'd spend at least 5 or so minutes just visualizing cancer exiting my body. And I felt healed. So I changed the way I started speaking. I stopped saying I had cancer, because your words have power. So if you continue to say you have it, you're going to continue to have it. So I said I was diagnosed with it, but I'm healing. So I'm not claiming that anymore. It's not my disease. It's not my cancer. It's none of that. It's gone. So because it felt like such a contradiction when I would do a visualization and a meditation, I felt healed. So for me to go back and now say I have it was a contradiction. And when you are ready to release your illness, your disease, whatever, you will start speaking differently or not speaking about it at all, because you're letting it go. Because I work with so many people who say, my arthritis is acting up, my bursitis, my this, my that, like it's your best friend. Don't claim these illnesses, you know, they're there for a short time to wake you up to that you change your routine and what you're doing to get rid of it, but don't hold on to it. So long story short, after that, or shorter process, I had given myself a year for this process, and I was coming up on the year, and I said, you know, let's do another biopsy. Even though the tumor was still there, I was expecting it to disappear. It was still there. So I said, it's been a year, let's do another biopsy. I feel healed, so let's do that. And we did the biopsy and all the other little nodules around, and I was very calm because I was meditating, and I know the technician was like, you're one of the calmest people we've ever seen have this done, because they're sticking very long needles in your neck in about 12 different places. So, but I was just meditating on a hymn, and I was like, everything's okay. And so I went back a week later to get the diagnosis, and the doctor was very somber. So I was afraid there might be bad news. So he goes through each nodule and saying, there's no cancer, there's no cancer, there's no cancer, and get to the last one. And I'm like, there must be, because he seems so sad. But then the last one, there's no cancer, you no longer have cancer. And I was overjoyed. I was a little confused as to why he wasn't happy about this information, but I realized he wasn't happy because he didn't do it. He doesn't now get to do the surgery, you know. So and even suggested that even though the cancer was gone, maybe I should still have the surgery just in case. And I thought that was ridiculous. And I was like, let me get out of here as quick as possible. I'm taking the good news and I'm gone. And I had a big wellness party that weekend to celebrate and share with people, because I had been sharing with them this process. And that's what changed my life from finding, trusting my gut was number one. The first time I really listened to my gut was that time when it was like, no, let's not do the surgery. Let's not do what they're telling you to do. There's a better way. So you have to learn how to get in touch with that gut feeling and trust it. So that was like my first step into learning to trust myself. And I've been trusting myself since then and moving forward. So that's how I got from engineering, working in defense, optimizing weapon systems, to now optimizing people's health and helping them live their best life, as opposed to optimizing how we kill people. And so that much better resonates with who I am, as wanting to see people live and live their best life. And from that, of course, I had to learn how to cook differently, cook, without all the processed stuff and dairy and all that kind of stuff. And so I trained myself on how to do that, using my Southern roots. My mom and aunts or grandmother, all very good cooks. And so I just kind of learned how to veganize things from there, and then started teaching other people. So that's how we got here. And from there, it's been a journey. So most of you have heard of the film, What the Health, or seen it. I believe you all watched it together, I guess. And in that film, it highlights the point that more than 70% of death and morbidity are largely lifestyle related and preventable. Not only are they preventable, but they're reversible. They are reversible. If it's something, and one of the things that I had a friend who was studying to be a naturopathic doctor when I was going through this cancer recovery, and I was her first patient because she was just ending her school part of it. And she reiterated, whatever you can get, you can unget, right? So whatever you can get, you can unget. And that really stuck with me, because so many times we hear, oh, this disease is incurable, this is incurable, this is incurable, and once you get it, you have it forever. And that's simply not true. What they mean is we don't have a pill that will cure it, or we don't want to give you the cure because it'll cut off our income stream. That's what that really means, because most things are reversible, or at least made much, much better. So these top killers, and we're talking about heart disease, complications with diabetes, kidney failure, all of these things that cut our lifespan short and quality of life short, are lifestyle related and diet related. That means we have the power to control those things. So why plant foods work on reversing a lot of these illnesses is because of several properties that are in plants that are not in other foods. So first, plants are alkaline. We've heard a lot about alkalinity, right? So our body is on a scale of like 0 to 14, and it wants to be around 7.2 all the time. And alkalinity is determined by, what's in your bloodstream and what you eat, and also how you feel. A lot of people don't talk about that. We'll talk all day about alkaline foods and alkaline water, but not understanding that feelings have the most profound effect on alkalinity, even over food. So let's talk about food first and come back to the feeling. So number one, most plant foods are alkaline. Leafy greens, fruits, all of those are alkaline. Most vegetables are alkaline, almost all of them. The things that are slightly acidic are going to be your grains like wheat and corn and things like that. They're going to be slightly acidic. And that's okay, because we're not trying to eat 100% alkaline. What we're trying to eat is majority alkaline, not 100% alkaline, because we need a balance. So like nuts, seeds and things are slightly on the acidic side, right? So if you're eating mostly fruits and veggies and a few nuts and beans, you're going to be eating that right amount of acid alkaline balance. So that's what we're looking for, a balance. What happens is a lot of the standard American diet, or the SAD diet, is primarily acidic. So for example, if you're eating white bread, dairy, meat, white sugar, all of those things are acidic. So if you're someone who goes to Dunkin' or, you know, McDonald's for breakfast and has an Egg McMuffin and a cup of coffee, or pancakes and coffee, you're going to be eating, that's almost 100% acidic, because it's white processed flour, which has the fiber taken out and most of the nutrients. So that's acidic. It's got sugar in it, which is acidic. Coffee is acidic. So if you're eating like donuts and coffee for breakfast, that's a highly acidic thing for your body. So your body gets that and it's like, okay, now we need to neutralize all this acid that just came in. And so it starts taking, you know, properties and things from your blood to keep that alkaline balance. Now, over time, so it's going to take minerals and things from your blood to create that balance. But if you do that every day, and then you're not giving it enough other nutrients to replenish, it starts robbing those nutrients. And now you're at a deficit of the nutrients that you need to remain healthy. And that's where the disease comes in, because you're giving your body acid bombs all the time and not enough alkaline foods to neutralize that. So your fruits and veggies are going to be alkaline. So that's number one. So back to the emotions. There are emotions that are more alkaline, and there are emotions that are highly acidic. And I bet you can guess which emotions are alkaline. And maybe you can even type that in before I say it. What do you think are the emotions that are most alkaline? And then the ones that are most acidic? Let's just take a guess here. It's not rocket science. And as a former rocket scientist, I can say that it's not rocket science. Exactly. So yes, happiness, joy, gratitude, thankfulness, excitement, all of those create a very alkaline environment in your body. So if you're happy for someone, or if you're grateful for what you have, or if you're like praising, you know, God, or if you're just, you know, happy in your life, then you are going to be more alkaline. On the other side, if you're more bitter, you're angry, you're sad, you're jealous, you're just, you know, not letting go, someone hurt you and you're holding on to that, those kind of things create a more acidic environment. So we might have had traumas in our childhood, or something somebody's done to us for a very long time, and we're holding on to that. That continuous feeling creates more acidity in your body, which then would create disease in the long term. So that's how that emotions feed into our health or our illness. Over time, it creates this environment that, repeated more and more and more, happens. So the other thing is enzymes. You only find enzymes in live food, meaning food that hasn't been cooked over 118 degrees, that is still living. And we're not talking about meat. So those are going to have enzymes that will kill you if you leave that sitting out. But we're talking about the enzymes that help you digest your food and process and metabolize your food so that it's useful. So you're only going to find it in like fruits and veggies that haven't been cooked. And so the older we get, the less enzymes our body produces, so the less breaking down of the food that's going to happen. So we need to eat raw foods to get that enzymes that we need to break down the food so that we can utilize it properly. The next thing is fiber. So there is, you only find fiber in, let's guess where you only find fiber. So if you guessed in plant foods, you would be correct. There's no fiber in dairy products, there's no fiber in cheese, there's no fiber in milk, there's no fiber in meat, or a tiny amount, if any. The fiber you find in plant foods, it's full of fiber. So strawberries, even bananas, apples, leafy green, everything that comes from a plant has fiber. And so most Americans are deficient in fiber, meaning, and when you're deficient in fiber, a couple of things happen. So fiber binds with the free radicals. So free radicals, as you can see in the cell, are the things that damage the DNA and cause things like cancer, right? So we have this thing called antioxidants that come from plants that repair those cells or get rid of free radicals. One of the things that binds with free radicals and takes it out of your body is fiber. So again, if you're eating that McDonald's breakfast, egg, cheese McMuffin, and coffee, there's nothing in there that's going to bind with the free radicals to take it out. Actually, it's going to be introducing new free radicals. And the free radicals are the things that damage the DNA, and the damage to the DNA is what causes cancer and other illnesses. So when you don't have enough fiber, you don't have the tools. It's like the broom of your body to sweep this garbage out. And so if you don't have enough of that, it sits around and then it takes over and does what it needs to do. So most Americans are deficient in fiber because we're not eating enough fruits and veggies on a regular basis. And then we have phytonutrients, which are plants. So phyto is just like plant nutrients. There are over 25,000 different types of plant nutrients in those foods. And so those plant nutrients are the antioxidants. They stop the oxidation of the cell. So when you think of antioxidant, what that means is stopping anti-oxidation. So oxidation, as you know, like when your car oxidizes and it starts rusting and breaks down, that's the same thing similar that's happening to the cell, the breakdown of the cells, right? So antioxidants stop the breakdown of the cells and protects those cells so that there's no damage to the DNA and the free radicals are neutralized. And so that's why plant foods heal your body. And that's why I didn't find a single study that said, eat more eggs to get rid of cancer, eat more dairy to get rid of cancer, eat more chicken to get rid of cancer. There was not a single study that said that, but there were literally thousands of studies that said how plant foods heal your body, how plant foods reverse diabetes, how plant foods clear the arteries and help reverse heart disease. That was all over the place. So this is why plant foods work, and this is why I stick to this diet. So I know we have some little markings on the screen, but that's okay. This is why plant foods work, and this is why animal products don't. So the World Health Organization, and it's been a few years now, so to update that, released a study that indicated that eating of processed meat raises your risk of cancer comparable to that of smoking. So it's comparable to smoking several cigarettes a day. Now, you know, if you start smoking several cigarettes a day, your cancer risk goes way up, right? We all know that now, right? Eating processed meat is comparable to smoking in terms of your cancer risk. So that's a big deal. So why is that? And we're talking about 50 grams of processed meat. And when we say processed meat, we're talking about sausages, salami, cured ham, all those kind of things, luncheon meats, things like that. Anything, you know, bologna, anything processed like that is what we're talking about. So that's like 50 grams is about a hot dog's worth of what we're talking about, eating that on a daily basis. So one hot dog, and this is the studies they did, they were comparing about one hot dog's worth of meat, which is about 50 grams of meat, in terms of how it raises your cancer risk. So it's not even a lot of it, because a hot dog's not even that big, but that amount is like you're sitting up here smoking daily. And most of us are smart enough to say, oh, we shouldn't be smoking, right? So this study, it caused a little bit of a stir when it came out, but then it quickly got buried because people just didn't want to hear this. So how these type of foods kill or harm us are saturated fat. You really don't find saturated fat in plant foods except maybe coconut oil or coconut, and you don't eat a lot of that. Otherwise, there's no saturated fat in most foods, most plant foods, but you find saturated fat in all of the animal products, right? Cholesterol, you don't find any cholesterol in plant foods, but you only find them in animal foods. So our body doesn't need cholesterol because we already make cholesterol. So we don't need additional cholesterol. And so it's like the plant foods have all the things that heal, the animal foods have all the things we don't need. So it just makes the decision to me so obvious. So they're hormones, right? So you'll see in the store where it says hormone-free beef or milk, right? That's really a lie, because you can't have hormone-free animal products. What they're trying to say is they didn't add any additional growth hormones to it. But any animal is going to have growth hormones because it's an animal. That's how it got to be an adult animal. So when you drink milk, it is full of hormones. It's the most hormonal fluid you can drink because it is meant for the baby cow to grow very fast in a few months, to gain about 500 pounds in 6 months. That's what milk, cow's milk, is designed for. So what does it have in it? Tons of estrogen, tons of growth hormone, tons of, yes, protein, and things like that for a baby cow. Okay, so if it makes a baby cow, and that's its only food, grow to 500-600 pounds in 6 months or so, why would humans be drinking that? So those growth hormones get into our body and accelerate disease, add excess estrogen, which is the food of cancer, especially reproductive cancers like breast cancer. So number one, plant foods don't have hormones because they're not alive. They don't have parents. They don't have growth hormones. So you don't get that. As a matter of fact, the plant foods are going to help neutralize those hormones. So hormones are in animal products, period. Then additionally, they add growth hormones to make the cows and the chickens and the turkeys grow really fast. Like, we need it now. We need the meat because the demand is so high. We can't wait for this natural life for it to grow. We're going to give it growth hormones. And so that's what you're going to find more in the fast food products, all the chain restaurants. They're using this growth hormone added meat, lower quote quality. And then the other thing is the antibiotics, right? So we've all heard of antibiotic resistance. A lot of that isn't because we just take too many antibiotics. A lot of it is because over 60-70% of pharmaceutical antibiotics are given to farm animals. So of all the antibiotics that are produced in this country, more than 60% of those go to farm animals. So just let that sink in. Why, would you ask? Why do farm animals need so many antibiotics? The reason is because, one of the reasons rather, is because they're raised in terrible conditions where they are housed in these concentrated feeding environments where they never, a lot of them, see the light of day. A lot of them are sitting in their own waste all day. They're in very confined, unhappy conditions. And in order to keep that cow or those chickens alive long enough to take them to slaughter, they have to put antibiotics in the feed from the very beginning. So now you're eating a slab of, let's say, steak that's got saturated fat, it's got cholesterol, which clogs the arteries, it's got its naturally occurring hormones, and it also has hormones from the fear of death because they smell the death. And so right before they die, they release this the stress hormones. So you have that in there. And then you have the added growth hormones. And then we're going to add antibiotics on top of it. Is anybody dying for some steak right now? So next we have the pesticides, right? Most of the pesticides that are on the crops are sprayed on the foods that feed animals. So corn, wheat, and soy are drenched in the Roundup type pesticide because when you can drench it in that, you don't have to do as much to that. And those are the foods they're feeding to the animals. corn, wheat, soy to make them grow very fast. So now you have the pesticides added on top of the antibiotics, on top of the other things. And then there's heme iron, which is meat-based iron that our body doesn't need, which has shown to cause issues and problems with us. And then eating these foods cause oxidative stress and free radicals. They actually introduce the things that we're trying to stop with the antibiotics. Eating that introduces that. So this clearly lays out why these type of foods, animal foods, harm versus plant foods heal. It's right there. So when you lay it out, it helps you make a better decision as to why the plant-based approach is much more healing. And it's not a panacea where it's going to heal and everything. What it does is lower your risk for these diseases dramatically, and in most cases help you eliminate them. And when you combine that with drinking enough water and other things that I'm going to touch on, then you have the formula for health. So foods to avoid. There are other things besides the meat and dairy. So I just went over our last slide, went over why we're not doing meat and dairy, because we're not a baby cow and we don't need to eat the meat. The other things that we want to eliminate are hydrogenated oils or trans fat. So when you see things like it will be in peanut butter and baked good, hydrogenated palm oil or hydrogenated, it's an unnatural form. They've added a hydrogen to this, so it basically lengthens the shelf life of food. And that's the only reason that hydrogenated oils and things are introduced, so that it can sit on the shelf for 2 years or more. And that's not good for your body. Your body doesn't know what to do with that. And that hydrogenated oil usually raises the bad cholesterol that we want lowered, and it lowers the good cholesterol. So we want to avoid anything that has trans fat or hydrogenated any type of oil. It'll usually say hydrogenated soybean oil, hydrogenated palm oil. Anytime you see hydrogenated, it's a no-go. MSG is an obvious one, but the problem with MSG, the monosodium glutamate, is that it causes the neurons in your brain to fire off faster than they should, which then causes them to be damaged. And so that causes neurological issues. So we want to get rid of MSG. It also makes you more addicted to the food, which is why they put it in there, to enhance the flavor. High fructose corn syrup. This is something else they do to sugar from corn. They process it in a very unhealthy way, which then causes a lot of problems in digestive health. It's been known to cause weakening of the lining of your intestines. So when you weaken the lining of your intestines, now your intestines, process the food, they extract all the nutrients from the food, and then they eliminate the food, right? So if you weaken the lining of that, little food particles can get through, or waste material that's supposed to be exiting your body gets reabsorbed back into your bloodstream and causes things like autoimmune diseases, lots of gut health, because now something has entered the system that the body does not recognize that should be there, and then it starts attacking its own body, because this waste product was supposed to be processed and exiting, but then we got little holes in our digestive lining, and then those waste materials seep back in, and then it causes a problem. And that's why so many people have these digestive issues. So high fructose corn syrup is a no-go. Anytime you see that, it's no. Refined white sugar or brown sugar, because brown sugar is just white sugar with some molasses added back. So it's no better than white sugar. Artificial sweeteners. Now, sugar suppresses the immune system. So I stopped eating any sweets or sugar when I was doing my cancer recovery, because I'm like, I need all the fight from my immune system I can get. So the last thing you want to be doing is assaulting it with refined white sugar. You can have sweets, but usually we're going to use things like dates, natural maple syrup, raw agave or raw coconut nectar, those kind of things, or fruit as sweeteners. Things like stevia is okay, but not truvia, which is a processed stevia, but natural stevia, because it just comes from a leaf of a plant. Monk fruit is another one that can be used. But these artificial sweeteners like Splenda, Equal, anything in these little packets are a no-go. They're also neurotoxins to the brain, which cause neurological issues. So nope at all. I know they market these to diabetics, but it does not help. Artificial food colorings. Anytime you see something with red number whatever, Blue Lake number 5, that is garbage food. That's another assault on your neurological system. And so we have a lot of issues with dementia, we have issues with MS and other neurological diseases. Some of these things are linked to eating these type of products, which are often banned in other countries, but the American food system doesn't care. So we have to be vigilant ourselves. And then refined, like white salt. We want to use like sea salt, not the processed table salt, which doesn't have as much flavor and doesn't have the nutrients that are in naturally occurring sea salt. So you got to read the labels and avoid these products. So what should we eat instead? Because then people start saying, I can't eat nothing then. We can't eat nothing. I hear that all the time. Well, what am I going to eat? People get really upset when you go through the list of things not to eat. So it's okay, because I was like that in the beginning too, because you're thinking, well, I can't eat this, I can't eat that. But when you realize there are other options, there are things you can eat, because I'm here testament that food is still good. I haven't wasted away to nothing, and I don't eat that stuff. So we want to focus on nature, the way food is grown. So fruits, we need 5 servings of fruits a day. So that's apples, oranges, berries, you know, all of the fruits, okay? One way to get more fruit in is to do a green smoothie with a couple of different types of berries in it. And you can put leafy greens, you can put cucumber in your smoothie. You can put nuts and seeds in there to add some more protein, or raw protein powder to make it more substantial. You want to eat lots of leafy greens, sprouts, kale, collard greens, you know, turnip greens, all the greens, romaine. So large salads, eating salads with your meal are a good way to get extra greens in. We just want to make sure we're not drenching our salads with a dairy dressing, you know, the ranch and all of that. You can find that plant-based options. You can do balsamic vinegars. You can do different dressings, but don't, you know, drench a nice and wonderful salad in a bunch of dairy. Beans, peas, lentil, and hummus, those types of things are going to be where you're going to get more of your protein in your nuts, beans, peas, lentils. And yes, tofu, soy products are good for you. Contrary to popular misinformation, soy is actually protective in things like breast cancer because it stops the uptake of all the excess estrogen that you might have from eating it and from being overweight. The more weight you carry, the more estrogen you carry naturally. So when you lose weight, you lose a lot of that estrogen. In the meantime, when you're eating soy, it is going to stop the uptake of that excess estrogen, which protects you against breast cancer. And no, it does not make men grow breast or become feminine. That's a complete lie, a misnomer. And a lot of the reason around soy, the misinformation is because it has estrogen in it. So everybody's thinking, oh, estrogen is bad, but milk and dairy products have like 1,000 times more estrogen than a soybean. Not only that, soy has phytoestrogen, which is a plant-based estrogen, which is thousands of times weaker than animal-based estrogen. So it also, we have different receptors in our body, one that uptakes the plant estrogen and one uptakes our own mammal estrogen and takes up the added estrogen when we eat animal products. So what happens is when we eat soy, it blocks some of that uptake of the estrogen and that receptor, so we're not getting it all and protects us. So soy has just gotten a bad rap because the meat industry has seen it as a competitor because it has as much protein as meat and it's so versatile that they put out a lot of misinformation about soy to make people afraid of it, so that you stick with your estrogen-filled dairy products and meat instead, which causes disease. So soybeans should be on this list too. Tempeh, I like the natural forms of soy, and most of the soy that is grown with pesticides is fed to farm animals. So you're getting soy anyway. If you're eating chicken and beef, you're just getting it secondhand. So, but you want to go with organic soy products like tempeh, which is very good. It's a fermented soy product, high in protein. And then tofu. You just have to learn how to season tofu for it to taste good. Nuts, of course, whole grains, brown rice, quinoa, these are just examples. Water, we have to be drinking about half your body weight in ounces of water. A lot of us are very dehydrated, especially if you have a problem going to the bathroom, you don't go easily or quickly, you're probably not having enough fiber and not enough water. So that's very important. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up here. The foods that you wanna focus on that are actual medicine. We have what's called the brassicas families of food, which are things like broccoli, cauliflower, kale, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, leafy greens. These actually have properties that fight cancers and other things. So I ate a lot of these types of food, raw and cooked. You can eat, cabbage raw. Obviously, we have coleslaw and other things that are raw. So most of these things can be eaten raw, but also cooked. So spices that are actual medicine, cinnamon, ginger, turmeric, cardamom. Cinnamon helps regulate your blood sugar. Ginger is going to bring down inflammation and enhance your immune system, as well as turmeric is a big cancer fighter, especially when it's combined with black pepper in the form of curcumin. It helps fight cancers and other things and inflammation, as well as cardamom. Cardamom tastes, it's like an Indian herb that tastes a bit like cinnamon, that you can use in that way. So those are just a few examples of spices. Other things that we want to keep in mind is to eat very colorful. You want to eat the rainbow, right? That means eat colorful foods. You should have a lot of different colors on your plate. So reds tend to rid the body of free radicals. So, that's going to be tomatoes, grapes, watermelon. Purple, like the purple onions and purple cabbage, protect against heart disease and clots. Oranges fight cancer and help repair DNA. The yellow helps the cellular communication in your body. The greens help inhibit cancer fighters. Onions, I ate tons of garlic and onions during my recovery because it inhibits tumor growth. So when you think about all these foods, you can make a lot of good stuff with garlic and onions and greens, right? I mean, when you combine all of these things, these are the things that I grew up on as a natural part of our diet, and we kind of got away from them and got into the processed foods. So another slide, which is very helpful, is immune boosting things, which especially important now that we're still dealing with COVID. So some of these we've covered. You want to eat plenty of vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds. Fiber is like a prebiotic, which helps support your gut health and helps the growing of probiotics in your gut, which is very important. So you want to have a healthy gut biome. Vitamin C, so your lemons, limes, grapefruit. Kiwi is also high, as well as bell peppers and vitamin C. Your garlic and ginger, antimicrobial and antifungal and antiviral properties. Juicing, if you feel like you're getting sick, drinking a green juice is a great way to get yourself well very fast. Green tea has lots of cancer-fighting properties. Supplements, these are just some. You don't have to take all of these, but I keep several of these in my cabinet all the time. The highlights are going to be vitamin D. We need about 5,000 international units a day. I keep zinc. Anytime I feel like I'm getting sick, I'm going to take the zinc and oregano oil, which are excellent. Mushrooms, medicinal mushrooms, shiitake and maitake, I took those during my cancer recovery. The probiotics, echinacea and golden seal is really great to take if you're starting to feel not well, like a virus, cold, or flu, as well as the grapefruit seed extract. All of these are things that I keep in my arsenal of things to get well. Amla powder is vitamin C powder, very helpful. It's very common, but very helpful. And then we want to sleep more. So a lot of times when we're sick, we feel like just not eating and going to bed, which is what you should do. because your body repairs while asleep. So drink water, drink a green juice, don't eat a lot of food, and go to bed, and your body will heal itself. It's also important to get sleep regularly because that is when it does the repair when you're asleep. So if you're not going to bed and getting that 7 to 8 hours of sleep, you're not giving your body the opportunity to do the repair work. So it's just in maintenance phase all the time. It's never getting to do the deep repairs that it would do if you were actually sleeping regularly. And then staying positive and upbeat, finding the joy in life actually helps heal you. Humor and laughing actually generates endorphins and things that are healing. So we want to make sure we're living a happy life. And then you want to lean into learning how to make yummy new dishes. All of these are plant-based. This top one is walnut tacos made from I do a walnut meat that tastes incredible. No one ever believes that it's actually just walnuts. Sun-dried tomatoes will do wonders for giving things texture. I put sun-dried tomatoes in my collard greens and people ask, what meat is that? I'm like, that's sun-dried tomatoes. So you'll have to learn new things. In the center is like a cashew-based banana cream pudding. So you can learn how to do these things. At the bottom here is like a mango with over a chia seed pudding. It's delicious, it's sweet, but it's all healthy. And then I do quiche. You can do quiche with nuts and seeds and things, and then a nice, delicious stir fry. So that's just a sampling of the things you can do. You can find these recipes on my website, which is rubylathon.com. And I have videos there as well that show you how to make a lot of these recipes. You can also check out my YouTube channel. It's all linked from my website where I show you how to make a lot of these things. And if you're in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, you can actually order from my food delivery service if you know someone in that area, and let them know about that. It's also linked from my main website, but it's Ruby Red's Vegan. We're serving healthy, delicious food already done for you, and it's organic and healthy and balanced. So that's another option for folks who are in this area. And then I do customized consultations and nutrition plans. And I also have online cancer recovery course because I can't coach everybody. So I have an online course that you can do for number one, if you're dealing with cancer recovery. Number two, I have a course called Get Out of the Life You Created, which is helping you create the life that you really want so that you avoid disease and other things. So those are both online, linked from my website there. So I'll pause, and it looks like we have some time for Q&A.
Great, excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Ruby. If you can minimize or remove the
Yes,
actually I can do it.
The share. Yes.
All right, I'm just gonna spotlight. All right, so the first question, well, first I want to say, just to everybody, I was like, I don't know what else you're going to say that no one else has said before, because as you mentioned when we were speaking earlier, we've had everyone pretty much in the plant-based space join us for HeartSmarts, but I think you have given us more information than probably most of the other presenters have, and you've presented it in a way that kind of, I guess you can say, took us to church, so to speak. And I just want to thank you for that, because you actually gave us a whole different perspective and added the emotional part of it. And so the first question I want to ask you is, for people who may be feeling depressed or who may have that sadness, those emotions that you consider to be acidic, what can they do, like, to monitor that, and to also perhaps do things, or what practices can they engage in that would help for them to decrease that and perhaps even eliminate it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So depression can be difficult because it keeps you from doing the things that actually make you feel better, like moving your body, like literally moving your body, walking, fresh air, listening to music. Like if you just don't even have the gumption to get up and get outside, because getting outside and like touching a tree, getting your feet on the ground will actually help you feel better. You can just listen to music that you like, or listen to a podcast that feels better, but also understanding where depression comes from. It's usually kind of ruminating over an issue or something, and it's kind of a form of self-protection, like I don't have to do anything because I'm so depressed. So you kind of want to get to the root cause of what's causing that. depression, and sometimes that's uncovering some of that trauma. So, working with someone or just working through those feelings and writing those things down and releasing it and knowing that you can heal from depression just like anything else. So the things that, aside from kind of getting to your root cause of depression, it's important because especially most of us have experienced some type of trauma growing up. It's just the way life is set up, right? And we don't understand how much it affects us. And so sometimes we have to just kind of uncover that and then start doing things that are beneficial. So eating healthier food actually creates better emotions because your gut is healthier. So you're going to feel better just eating fresher food. You're going to feel better with fresh air, opening a window, walking, dancing, anything like that. Getting a hug actually makes you feel better and is very healthy, those kind of things. So, at first it's going to be a little bit of a battle to get out of that routine of doing nothing. But then to say, I can do one thing, I can listen to this music, then I can dance, and then I can, shower, and then I can get outside, and then I can start letting people in who are safe, that kind of thing. So, and then eating healthy, drinking fruits, smoothies, and lots of leafy greens will actually help your mind heal from those things.
Okay, wonderful. And so, as I shared with you before, there are people in this meeting who currently have cancer. And as they're listening to you, perhaps they may be leaning now more towards using a more natural approach to their healing. Do you have any precautions that you would say to them in terms of when to move away from what the doctor is prescribing and move more towards the holistic approach? Or is that something that you just encourage all the time?
I don't always encourage that. I encourage people to go with their gut, because sometimes people don't really believe in the natural method. So if you go into it like, I don't know if this is going to work, I'm not sure this is what I should do, it's generally not. You get what you expect. So just say that again, you get what you expect, because that is so true. So if you expect that it's not going to work. So for people who are very fearful and very traditional, I'm like, maybe you should go with what you think is going to work, because most likely that's going to be what works for you. So if you have a leaning and and you have your gut is telling you the natural way is what I should do, you should listen to that. No one can make that decision for you. And there's so much evidence that backs up why it makes sense. And so educate yourself. What are the side effects of the traditional approach? And then what are the side effects of the natural approach? And then you kind of make that decision from there, because it has to be your decision. You have to buy all into whatever approach you're going to.
Okay, excellent. So talking about having a more plant-based diet, there's a question in the chat about pesticides, and the person wants to know, aren't pesticides in plant foods? But in addition to that, are there fruits and vegetables that you suggest people buy organic more than others, or should they try to purchase everything organic if possible?
Great question. Yes, so there are pesticides on foods, most foods that are not organic. Not all of them have pesticides. So what's interesting in the book, the China study, showed that when there are pesticides present, if you ate less than 10% of your diet as animal foods, so you're eating 90% or more plant-based, those pesticides do not cause disease. But if you ate more than 10% of your calories were from animals, then those pesticides did then cause disease. So the plants are so protective that even when the pesticides are there, you're still protected from them. So they outweigh the pesticides. So that's number one. So first thing, just eat the fruits and veggies. Because if you're eating meat, you're eating pesticide-ridden things anyway, because the animals are eating the pesticide-grown food. So just eat the plants. Secondly, not everything has to be organic. So I think somebody put in here the Clean 15. Yeah, there's something called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15 that's published by the Environmental Working Group. And so things like leafy greens and apples and berries, things with the very soft skin that bugs can get to very easily, those are sprayed a lot. So I only buy apples and berries and leafy greens organic, because I know those are going to be sprayed if they're not organic. Some things that don't have to be are like onions, pineapple, asparagus. They don't spray those things. Cabbage, they don't spray them as much. So you can look at that list and see what you can kind of save some money on, because they're not really spraying the garlic, that much anyway, because they have like their natural protectant. So not everything has to be organic, but the leafy greens, so your, salad greens, your berries, your peaches, plums, the tomatoes, you want those to be organic.
Okay, great. And so moving on to sweeteners, one question asks, in terms of sweeteners, can anything be said about erythritol? And then there's another question that says, what are your thoughts about the recent news about stevia and monk fruit not being healthy?
So yeah, I've read about the erythritol, and so it is one of those that should be avoided. I have not seen anywhere that said stevia or monk fruit, unless they were lumped in there in error, because stevia is literally, you can get green leaf stevia, which is literally the leaf of the stevia crushed up. That's it. It's a plant. So there's nothing toxic about that. It becomes toxic when they add things to it, like erythritol. So you can get a stevia-based product like Truvia that has stevia, but it has other stuff in it. Now that would be toxic, but that's not what we're talking about. So you just get plain, straight stevia, or even green leaf stevia would be even better. And I haven't seen any reports about monk fruit unless it's combined with erythritol. So a lot of the quote, I think keto products use erythritol and things like that. So those are the ones to be avoided. To my knowledge, stevia and monk fruit are not on the bad list. Those are things that you're able to use. I see something about xylitol. That one is kind of, in the air, because there's some products that they're saying that's very protective for your teeth. It's not something I use on purpose. But it may be in like toothpaste or something. So you're not like eating it, but you're still absorbing some of that. So it's not something I would use purposely as a sweetener. I stick with either natural sweeteners or natural stevia or monk fruit.
Okay. And what are your thoughts on in terms of acid versus alkaline foods? There are some, I guess, beliefs in the area that some vegetables are man-made, like broccoli, or hybrid. Do you go as far as to say do not consume those things, or if it's a vegetable and it's organic, for the most part, eat it?
Yeah, so I think there's some misinformation about the man-made foods, because farmers have been creating new species by combining and splitting leaves and things all along, and you can do that in your own home. So I don't see that being a problem, that something was modified naturally on the farm, which is different from genetically modified foods. So there's a difference between genetically modified foods and foods like broccoli that are hybrids naturally occurring because someone decided, let's combine a plum and something else, and now we have a plout. That's nature being able to do that. There's nothing wrong with that. So I don't agree with staying away from quote hybrids. I agree with staying away from genetically lab modified foods that have been injected with the glyphosates and things like that.
Can you talk about the E number in food?
The E number?
Yes.
Are you talking about like the number on the fruits and veggies?
So I was scared to ask you, I didn't know what it meant. Brother Leston, if you can clarify what you mean by that, and then I'll come back to that.
Okay.
What is your thought on sea moss?
I think it's good. I think maybe overdoing it, because you don't need a lot of it. With the sea vegetables, they're very concentrated. So I take like green powders that have like chlorella, spirulina in it, sea moss. I put that in my smoothie sometimes. So I think it's great, but some people are overdoing it with tablespoons and tablespoons of the gel, and you just need a little bit. Because we're looking for micronutrients with the sea vegetables, you're not getting all of your main nutrients. So we're talking about micronutrients, you only need a little bit. So I do think it's a good addition, but people can probably tamper down with it to like, a teaspoon here and there, and not tablespoons daily.
Okay, great. And you are actually the first person who's ever mentioned wheatgrass in any of these presentations, which is really
Okay.
interesting. And so in terms of wheatgrass, what are your suggestions for what people should be looking for, how they should purchase it? Should they use the powder, or what are your suggestions for that?
I think if you're dealing with cancer, you should use the fresh wheatgrass because you're going to get the most out of it. If you can find, I've found like pallets of it you can buy at like some of the health food stores, like My Organic Market or others have pallets like where the juicing places get it. And it just takes a few minutes to juice it in a masticating juicer. If you have one of those spinning juicers, they call cylindrical, it's not going to do the wheatgrass. But if you have a slower masticating one, and then they have special wheatgrass juicers too. So I think it would be best to juice it yourself every day and get your 2 ounces that way. A pallet will last you like 7 to 10 days. So that's kind of worth it to me. And then if you're just in maintenance phase or wanting to be healthy, I would say the powder or the frozen would be good. And if you're dealing with cancer, you just cannot get the fresh, then probably the frozen would be next, and then the powder.
Okay, and then these are just going to be some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Is almond milk healthy? And what's the difference between soy and tofu?
Okay, almond milk can be healthy. It depends on what brand you're buying. So you don't want any of these plant milks that have carrageenan in them, because that's a thickener that is shown to be inflammatory. So carrageenan is a no-go. But you can make your own almond milk with water and dates and almonds. But so if the ingredients besides the almonds are pure, yes, it's healthy. If it's got too much other stuff, not so much. And then if you make your own, it's great. And then you said, I'm sorry, I missed, what was the next one?
Difference between soy and tofu?
There's no difference. Tofu is soy. It's just that soy comes in a lot of different forms. So there's the soybean like edamame, which is like a young soybean. And then there's just the soybeans that you make soy milk from, or that you make tofu from. So tofu is a form of soy. And then the tempeh is another form of soy. It's been processed just a little bit, but fermented, so it's actually better for your gut health. So yes. Mhm.
Great. Are there any foods that you recommend for seasonal allergies?
Well, lots of, obviously leafy greens are always helpful, but I'm not like seeing one particular food that just like gets rid of the allergies. It's usually dairy products. Eliminating that helps a lot with getting rid of seasonal allergies. And then we're looking at some things that reduce inflammation. So that's not quite a quick answer.
Okay. Okay. Do we need supplements, and are there any brands of vitamins and supplements? And if we do, are there any brands of vitamins and supplements that you recommend?
Generally, yes. I feel like we do need supplements because most people aren't eating a well-rounded enough, high rich food diet. So I like to supplement with like Amazing Grass. I like their products, their green powders and things like that, because I feel like it gives you a broad spectrum. If I'm doing a vitamin, I like Mega Foods or Garden of Life. Those two brands are food-based, no synthetic fillers, no food colorings and all of that. So don't buy your supplements at Walgreens or Walmart. Get them quality that actually are food-based supplements and no food colorings.
Why is oil unhealthy?
Predominantly because it's a very concentrated food. You don't just like find oil naturally occurring. We have to press it out of a seed. And if you just ate that food normally, like if you just ate olives, for example, you would have to eat so many olives to get 1 teaspoon of oil. So because it's a concentrated food, we tend to consume too much of it. And that causes the problem. And then the other problem with oil is the omega-6, omega-3 issue. We get way too many omega-6s because more foods have that in there, but most of the oils are omega-6 fatty acids. And when you have too many omega-6 and not enough omega-3 and 9, it causes inflammation. So that's generally why it's not a good food, because it's first, any concentrated food has to be eaten in small amounts. And if you're like frying or sauteing in it, that's not a small amount.
Okay. And you mentioned microwaves not being that healthy. Can you explain why?
Because in some cases it toxifies the food based on what it's heating up. and because of the speed at which it heats food, because anytime you heat food, you're going to be losing some of the nutrition from it. But when you heat it at a super fast rate that microwaves do, it's been shown to damage the food and cause it to be, number one, lose a lot of the nutrients, but cause it to now be unhealthy because of the way that it was heated. That's the rate at which the molecules bump into each other is unnatural. Whereas when we heat things on the stove, they still bump into each other, but not at that higher rate, which is why it takes longer to heat on a stove than a microwave. So that's the mechanism that seems to be the problem.
And similar to that question, do you have any thoughts on air fryers?
Air fryers are generally okay, except some people have brought up the issue that you're using, like, a lot of them have a nonstick coating. So like nonstick cookware is not good for you because it does release toxins when you cook on it. And so if you're laying it on a nonstick surface that comes in there, then that can cause some toxicity in the food. If it's not coated with nonstick or you're not using that, then it can be okay. The heating is not a problem. It's usually the coating that could be the problem.
Okay, and last few questions. This is more of a specific one. The person writes that their doctor prescribed curcumin, turmeric, and reishi spore mushrooms for their after cancer care. Those are costly. Do you know other options that are less costly?
Well, curcumin doesn't have to be that expensive. You know, and you could do turmeric powder and add your own black pepper to it, because the mechanism adding, like, curcumin is just turmeric with black pepper. The black pepper activates the turmeric in a way that helps it fight cancer. So you could kind of do your own concoction there, because turmeric is not that expensive. Just get a good brand of it, a good organic brand of it, and add black pepper. Could do that. The mushrooms, not too much of a get around there, except maybe looking at some different brands. And hopefully you don't have to do that forever. So it's usually a short amount of time till you kind of out of the window of cancer recurrence, and then you kind of go to a maintenance phase where you can take less of that.
Okay, and does it matter what stage of cancer someone is in for them to make the decision to do the natural route, or is it again what you said about having the belief?
Yeah, it does not matter. People have come back from near death and once they switched and come back. So I've seen it happen where people were like, couldn't walk, couldn't move, and started juicing and doing things, and like the doctor was shocked they were alive. So it's never too late to switch.
Okay, and do you have any thoughts about cooking with aluminum foil?
Yes, don't don't cook with aluminum, and don't use deodorant with aluminum. It messes with, it's a toxin for the brain.
All right, and then some of the other questions asking about like the GMOs and things like that can definitely be answered by watching What the Health, I think. And there's some other questions regarding why milk and things like that are still given to children in schools, and I think that could be answered in What the Health also. So are there any kind of final tips or suggestions that you would leave with the attendees tonight? Maybe 3 tips to follow as they're
Sure.
letting their food be thy medicine moving forward.
Yes. And I just see an answer. Wheatgrass does not have gluten, so you're okay with that. Instead of aluminum, there's stainless steel would be better, or ceramic or something like that, but just not aluminum. And if you're going to use aluminum foil, I usually use like a natural wax paper or parchment paper before I would wrap something in aluminum. You must use it to preserve, but also glass, store your things in glass instead of plastic and foil. So this is, I guess my top 3 would be open to change, because, we tend to, our body and our brain likes to do the same thing over and over. It does not like change. So change is a challenge, but be open to it, because there's a lot out there, and this can really enhance your life in a significant way. So following on, be open to change, be open to try new things. Some things are going to taste better than others, but keep going until you find something that is good, that tastes good, because the healthy food can taste good and it should taste good. So don't be afraid to experiment with that. Just keep an open mind and be like, I'm going to try this. And okay, so this plant milk wasn't good. I'm going to try something else until I find what I like. And know that the body does and will heal itself when you give it what it needs. And that is going to be rest and water and good plant foods and joy in your life. So with those three, those things, you can't go wrong.
Okay, so the last question that I have for you, you mentioned that you threw yourself a wellness party, and I've never heard of that before. And we have so many people in this program who've lost weight, who've reversed their chronic health conditions and all of that. And so can you tell us what was included in your wellness party? And before you say that, I just want to tell everyone I'm wearing my yellow tonight because our theme for March is get excited about health, get excited about wellness. So I think you telling us about this wellness party will be a great way for us to end the month of March. So what did you do in your wellness party?
Yeah, great. So I got some really healthy food from a restaurant that served food that I would eat. It was like Indian food because it was, plant-based, yummy mocktails and things like that. So we had the healthy food, we had good music. And then I took some time out to just thank everybody for supporting me and giving a little synopsis of what I did and just celebrate life and health and just had a really good time. So it was like a birthday party, except the new birth of health and lifestyle.
Oh, wow. I think that's awesome. And just a great way to end this presentation. Thank you so much, Dr. Ruby. This was awesome, more than we could have imagined. And you've really given us some things to think about in terms of really our attitudes and how we look at our health and wellness going forward. So thank you again. And as Dr. Ruby mentioned, she also is a chef. So she and I will be talking more about perhaps having her come and do a cooking demo for us at another time. So thank you again. And I'm just going to ask everyone to unmute and thank Dr. Ruby or express your gratitude however you'd like. So thank you so much,
Totally
Dr.
appreciate
Ruby, for joining us.
Thank
you, Dr. Ruby.
Thank you.
I learned a lot of
Awesome.
information.
Congratulations.
Wonderful.
So much.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Wonderful.
Bless you.
Continue blessings on your life.
Great.
Thank
Wow.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great
So we
evening.
needed this information.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lathon.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh my God.
Awesome. Thank you, Doctor.
Great presentation.
Good night.